Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I am your host, Nelson, and today we are going to be doing three segments as usual. We're going to talk about KD and Dame's homecoming, as well as Ben Simmons and his injury update, give a recap of the rest of the games that happened from last night, and we're going to do a segment that's a little bit different, where I talk about my picks for tonight's matchup, since there aren't that many games and they start at 7:30. And as always, we have our fourth segment, so please be sure to stick around and figure out exactly what that fourth segment is. If you enjoy this episode, please remember to follow us and to subscribe to the show. You can find us all over on every different social media platform, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, TikTok, Twitch, Facebook, Instagram, all sorts of things. And as always, as I do before every single show, I'd like to please remind you guys to tip and to donate, just to get your comments recognized. The link is streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. The link is in the description, and it's also displayed below on the ticker. As really makes the show much more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Once again, that is streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. And with that, we can begin with our first segment of the day, which will be talking about Kevin Durant and Damian Lillard's homecoming game. So Dame and KD both played at the homes of the teams that have recently traded them. So KD went over to Brooklyn to play the Brooklyn Nets, and Dame went back to Portland, to the Rip City. The Nets gave Kevin Durant a tribute video just before the game. As a Nets fan, I am absolutely fuming. What did he do with us? Why did we make him a tribute? For what? Making it to the second round in 1 year and then getting swept after, only to leave? He gets a tribute for that? I was absolutely disgusted at that tribute video, and the fact that he even deserved one. He doesn't deserve one, at least in my personal opinion as a Brooklyn Nets fan. He wasted our time for 3 years just constantly teasing us. Granted, the reason for his split up wasn't primarily his fault. It was more Kyrie being a quack, and I think if Kyrie wasn't all that, he probably would have stayed. And what was worse is that they left when they were on, the biggest winning streak in franchise history. They were going up, 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 and then immediately out of nowhere, Kyrie was just oh, let me get out of here. I want to get traded. It's so difficult being a Brooklyn Nets fan. You have absolutely no idea how difficult it is. I don't know how we do this to ourselves every single time. It dates all the way back to when KG and Paul Pierce were traded to the Nets, and then our picks become Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. And then we did it to Harden, and then we get Ben Simmons, who's injured yet again. Who would have thought? More on him later, though. And now we're stuck, because of all this, now we're stuck in Midtown. So obviously we lost in a blowout because we stink. And it's not in this game, it's not like we played bad, but it's just we weren't hitting as many shots as we should have. And when you go up against a team like Phoenix, if you don't have elite defense, which right now we're a mid team, so we're mid in every single category, both offense and defense, ranked 17th. If your offense isn't performing tonight, your defense has to be there to stop those three elite scorers, along with the rest of the scorers that are on that team. And if you don't have that defense, you better make sure that you can score every single possession, because best believe that they will. Kevin Durant, this last game, he took out all of his anger of not being in the GOAT conversations on us and dropped 33 on 10 for 16. I actually, you know what? I'll touch on that. I've never really talked about Kevin Durant and how how he's confused about how he's not in any of the GOAT conversations, and how he believes that he should be up there. When you leave and you go to Golden State, the team that beat you, and then you leave them, and then they win without you, you are not going to get into any type of GOAT conversations whatsoever. Not to mention, LeBron already exists, and he will always be second place to LeBron. Always. No matter what. Kevin Durant's career in the postseason, if you just get rid of Golden State, it's actually one that could rival Harden if you think about it. I mean, what other accomplishments has he done in the playoffs besides play with a very stacked team in Golden State? It sounds like I'm discrediting his rings, and that's because I am. Like, the team was literally the Avengers. Like, nobody was beating them. Credit to him for being the best player like on that team at the time, but it's just to me you can't be that guy strictly with those guys. Like, you can't be the player that, like, you can't be that closer and that have that GOAT reputation if you only play well in the postseason with a specific set of teams. Like, then that specific team, with how stacked it was just completely unfair. And this is why I say LeBron is obviously better than him, because he's shown he can win without Kyrie. He's shown he can win without Dwayne Wade. He's shown he can win without Bosh. And he's shown he can win without Anthony Davis. So, and none of those players would have had any of their rings without him. You can't be the guy with only those guys. Not to mention, Kevin Durant is also the type of guy that would brag about beating a handicapped kid in a foot race. I saw that on Twitter. Special shout out to Barry on here. The game started out competitive, but then the scoring for the Suns was on fire for the third quarter. The Nets, they never came back. Like, maybe if we had Ben Simmons to get some stops, we'd be able to win the game. Who knows? Maybe the game would have been a lot more competitive. But Ben Simmons apparently re-injured himself. This time it's his knee. He said that the day before, like when he aggravated his ankle, like at the game, he said he was fine, according to reporters. But then his status moved from fine to then questionable, and then from questionable to no. Like, I just knew he was going to sit this one out. The minute he was listed as questionable, I just knew he was going to sit this one out. He's just... It really infuriates me how someone who is 6'10" and built like the next LeBron is just this soft and like this scared to play basketball. And it infuriates me how he's wasting his talents. Like, he's scared of the media ridiculing him. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Please get him off my Brooklyn Nets. Now, he's going to pull a Kyrie and like play whenever he feels like it with this day-to-day status that he has now. Like, he could have played defense. He could have played legitimate defense on Durant. And like, he's arguably the best matchup against those type of players, against like Giannis, against like KD. He's perfect for those matchups. Is he scared? Is he scared to play against them? Like, it would somewhat make sense, seeing as how Ben Simmons sort of abandoned his team when we expected him to play in the Boston Celtics series, but he just chose not to for whatever reason, because in my opinion, he was scared. But he does this like all the time. It's a pattern with him, and it's so annoying. Please get him off my team. But enough of me ranting about my terrible team, and let's just talk about Portland's homecoming and Damian Lillard. Dame finally returned to Rip City. I don't know if they played his tribute video on the Jumbotron, but a lot of fans showed him the love that he rightfully deserved. I was able to see the one on the Nets because I have the Yes app. They made him one in the beginning of the year. Portland made a tribute video for Damian Lillard at the beginning of the year when he got traded. I know it doesn't mean much either, but he put up with them for like the longest time. Like, I know he didn't do much on Portland, similar to how Kevin Durant didn't do much on Brooklyn, but he put up with them for the longest time and tried his hardest to win with them. And we all know that he wanted to win with them. And he's their franchise leader in points, which definitely like gives him much more of a reason to get a tribute video than Kevin Durant. Unfortunately, his return home didn't go as he would have hoped, as the Bucks would lose in a close one to another bottom-feeding team. Like, I've been high on the Bucks like for a while, but now like since Doc Rivers is their coach, like that's also playing a part into why I've been a little bit more worried about them recently, and I might have given them a little too much credit than they deserve. Like, I've always said that like, oh, they just need to figure it out post All-Star break. Well, now I don't even know if they will figure it out post All-Star break. Like, Giannis was good at this game up until the end. Giannis was good in this game up until the end of the game. More on that later. But it's primarily Dame that I'm worried about. Like, his shooting numbers look like straight tour dates sometimes. He went 9 for 23 from the field and 3 for 13 from 3. If he can't get his offense consistent enough and ready for the postseason, then the Bucks are going to be in for a lot of trouble because Dame's lack of defense is going to hurt them in the postseason. And I mentioned Giannis was good until the end of the game, and that's just because he missed both free throws that would have put the score within 1. Now, the Bucks, in my opinion, I'm not entirely sure if this was the fault, if this was Giannis's fault. Like, he made the free throws? No, he missed the free throws, pardon me. He missed the free throws. So, obviously, that part is his fault. But when the play before that, like before he got fouled on the play, the Bucks, they fouled previously, and Portland was sent to the line where now they get to shoot free throws, and they made it a 3-point game. With that in mind, you're going to have to inbound the ball from one side of the court and try to get all the way to the other side of the court just to see if you can get a shot up. Because Portland eventually ended up making those 2 free throws to make the score to make it a 3-point lead. So, however, on the inbound, it wasn't a center, it wasn't a forward that was inbounding it. It was Dame. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, don't correct me if I'm wrong because I know I'm not. But Damian Lillard has this clutch reputation behind him. So why is he the one inbounding the ball here? Why isn't Giannis inbounding the ball? Like, he literally is known for hitting these clutch shots and these deep clutch shots as well. He was the best bet to potentially win the game. I mean, I'm sure he was going to get fouled, and again, like, if he did get fouled, he's also your best bet in making free throws. Because of this, he passed the ball to Giannis, and obviously the Blazers said, that's free real estate, and went and fouled him. This is a problem, though, because Dame should have been the one to take the last shot. Like, I don't care what anyone says, Dame should have been the one to take that final shot in that game, and Giannis should have been the one to inbound the ball. And it wasn't like, I didn't see much, like, wanting from Dame to, like, take that final shot. Like, I don't see, you know how there's players that, like, I'll give you an example. Kobe Bryant, whenever it's late game, or Michael Jordan, those type of players, like, late in the game, 4 seconds left, you need a shot, and you have to run down the court, both of those players would say, give me the ball. Like, no hesitation, give me the ball. But Damian Lillard just walked to the inbound. Like, he didn't even wait for someone to go try and inbound it. He walked to the inbound and inbounded it to Giannis. Now, personally, if I was Dame, I wouldn't have done that. I would have told Giannis to go inbound the ball himself and then put myself in that situation to help win the game for the Bucks. And not only that, in his own city, like, I would have done that if I was Dame, simply because of, like, you need that killer instinct. And it's like the fact that he didn't have that killer instinct in the fourth quarter when he normally does is very, very concerning to me. It is very, very concerning to me. It was a very dumb move. It's one of the dumbest moves that I've seen in a while. And then we also have to talk about the other problem, which was Giannis and him actually missing these free throws late in the game. He missed both of them, meaning that there was no chance that the Bucks were going to end up winning this game. If he would have made both of them, there was enough time on the clock for them to potentially foul and then maybe get another shot off. However, there were no timeouts. So that's essentially what killed the Bucks in this situation, wasting all of their timeouts and not having enough for the end of the fourth quarter. Now, is this a problem with Doc Rivers with the addition and him being the new head coach? So far, they haven't won a game with him as the head coach, and like the last 2 games they've lost with him as the head coach, and it's really not looking good. It's really not looking good for Doc Rivers, and you know how I feel about Doc Rivers. He has that reputation of, like, constantly falling short come the postseason, not making the right play, not calling the right plays, not making the right substitutions, all that kind of stuff. It's like it's common for Doc Rivers, and that also has me very, very scared going into the postseason for the Bucks. So I'm gonna, like, lower the hype meter for them and say that they really need to work on certain aspects of their offense, and Dame has to get better. He has to play better, and he has to be ready to play better. But With that, we are out of time for our first segment, and we are going to go into the next segment where I give a quick recap of the previous games that happened from last night after this short break. So I'll be right back.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back with the second segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast. And in this segment, we are going to give a quick recap of last night's games. But before I do that, I'd like to remind everyone, as always, to please remember to tip and donate using the link in the description. The link is, just to make sure to get your comments recognized, the link is streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. Makes the show much more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Once again, the link is streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. Link is in the description, and it is also displayed right below the kicker, as always. And without further ado, let us break right into the second segment, where we are going to recap all of the games that happened from last night. And we're going to start with the one that has me the most confused, which is OKC beating the Denver Nuggets by 5. And there was no Jokic playing. So either the bench that night was very good, or the Thunder aren't the team that I thought they were. Let me know what you guys think. But in my personal opinion, this game should have been a blowout for Oklahoma City. I mean, a win is a win, but still, like, you can't have, like, just Shy being the only one out there doing things offensively. That's just never a good sign, especially against a team that doesn't have their best player, and the rest of the team wasn't playing that well either, the rest of the other team. That's not the same team I saw where, like, they were able to handle everyone, and everyone was able to, like, handle their own in the respective games. This is not the same Oklahoma City team that I thought they were. Shy had 34, and the second highest score was 18 from Chet. And here's the worst part. The Nuggets, they didn't play that well in this game, and they still made it a 5-point game. Jamal Murray shot 6 for 14. Michael Porter Jr. went 6 for 17. Watson went 3 for 10. KCP went 3 for 10, just to name a few. So it's starting to look like it's the Thunder just not being, like, as good of a team as I thought they were. This is obviously, like, very, very concerning if you are the Thunder. After losing the games that they did, especially to the Pistons in a blowout, that has tarnished their reputation, in my opinion. You can't lose to the Pistons as a top seed. You just can't. Like, you can't afford to do that. Like, close games, those are a different story. But downright losing in a blowout, you absolutely cannot have that against the worst team in the league. It has seriously changed my opinion on the team overall, and I don't really see them as a team that could make this much noise anymore. Like, I think they might end up being one and done. Unless, like, I don't know, maybe they play the Lakers and then they get lucky. But the Nuggets right now, they have nothing to worry about, seeing as they only lost by 5, and they didn't play well, and they didn't even have their best player that night. So when you contribute all of these factors for the Denver Nuggets, I think you're still in a good spot. Like, you lost this game, but you were far from your full strength, and you still made it close. So it definitely shows like how it either will give them confidence about like how good the bench actually is, or it's just because OKC just isn't the team that I thought they were. But on to more games. The Heat finally won a game after losing 7 in a row, and Jimmy showed up and scored 31 on 10 for 14. Josh Richardson had 24 off the bench to help their scoring, and Bam ended with 16. Now, the media coverage with Jimmy Butler it's always really odd to me. Like, he's like one of those few star players that doesn't get ridiculed for playing bad at all. But the minute he plays good, everyone just flocks to him. Like, you'll just see everyone spam, play off Jimmy, play off Butler. It's really odd to me how he's one of the well-known stars, but he doesn't nearly get scrutinized as much as the other stars would. At least in my personal opinion. I haven't really seen much from Jimmy Butler, and I haven't really seen much slander from him coming from media at all. But regardless of that, recently, Kendrick Perkins suggested that Miami and Jimmy should go their separate ways. On last night, not last night, he suggested this on another live show that he did where he said that Jimmy should go his separate ways. I don't think that there is a reason for them to go their separate ways at this point. Because like they just made the finals last year. So you have to run it back every single until you can do it. Like you got to run it back. Like I mean if it doesn't work this year, maybe look into switching it. But seeing as you made the finals as an 8th seed, like you run it back. There's no hurting it. There's no harm. They just made the finals. So having Jimmy means like you're always in a spot to compete. So I don't think that they should trade Jimmy away, as Kendrick Perkins should say. Now, not saying he's been playing bad recently, but like the media is like it's barely showing any type of highlights from him, and we don't really see much highlights other than Jamie Jacquez Jr. So maybe that's why he thinks that they should part ways. But I mean, 7-game losing streak. I mean, yeah, it's tough, but you still have until All-Star break, and again, they're notorious for going on runs. So like. It might not even matter. They could be a play-in team and could possibly just like make it all the way with how their runs have been recently and like how they've always been underdogs in a majority of the series and they end up making it to the finals. I wouldn't put it past them. Now, the Kings, which was the team that they went up against, was another relatively good team that remains relatively under the radar despite being really good. They are the 5th seed. In an incredibly stacked Western Conference. Keegan Murray ended the game with 33. Sabonis ended with 19, 17, and 13. But De'Aaron didn't show up in this game, unfortunately, with 13 points on 4 of 16. This definitely killed the team. If he had one of his nights scoring the ball like he normally would, then I feel like this game would have definitely ended up closer, and I feel like the Kings would have actually won if De'Aaron Fox showed up to play in this game. Do I think the Kings could make noise in the playoffs? Depending on the matchups, I think they have a good shot. I feel like they learned their lesson from last season, and now that they have much more experience in playing in such high leverage games, and they better understand how to handle pressure because they've been in this type of pressure before. Once last year when they went up against Golden State, despite Golden State being a 6th seed, once the series was at 3-2, I knew that if Golden State was able to win at home in Game 6, they were going to win in Game 7. That team was too young and too new to the playoffs, and if you don't remember, the Kings haven't made the playoffs since 2005 up until that season. Curry and the Warriors already had experience. They've been to these kinds of situations all the time. The only thing I wasn't expecting from that game was how good Steph Curry was and how he just absolutely destroyed them. Like, there was nothing stopping Curry that game. But nothing much to say about the Heat. You already know how I feel about them, capable of making a run. But still, like with the way that they've been playing recently, I'm not sure if this year is going to be the year where they do it again. But we'll see, because all bets are on the table. We'll see. Now, in other news, the Cavs hosted the Pistons last night, and Donovan Mitchell obviously torched them. But Darius Garland made his return after coming back from injuries, and he played really well. He had 19 points in 20 minutes on 7 for 12. That's really good. Now, I know this was a relatively close game for the Cavs, but this was because like the rest of the team did not step up. More on that in a second. But I'm glad to see that Garland was able to show up and that he hasn't lost his step. Really, really good news for Cleveland fans. Now, he'll definitely be a great help for the Cavs, who already have been winning games without him against really competitive teams. Donovan Mitchell scored 45 points, and those 45 points are more than his entire bench. That is a problem in this game because why is the Cavs bench struggling against the Detroit Pistons? Why were they struggling in scoring? There was no unnecessary. That's inexcusable. That was basically like the only reason like why this game was relevant, which is Donovan Mitchell scoring 45 points. It's sort of been expected that like the breaking news, like when you're talking about Pistons, is that the Pistons win a game, but it's just it's just a playoff team going against the worst team in the league. There's nothing really much that needs to be said about it, other than Donovan Mitchell saved them from utter embarrassment, and the Cavs obviously like they hold the 4th seed, so they're going to be in the playoffs in my opinion, the top 4 teams. And now that they have Garland back, we could see if they have an argument for being one of the teams to beat. Now, Pistons, they obviously aren't going anywhere, as you know. They're fighting for the number 1 pick in the draft, and Cavs have a good chance of making it to the second round this time. The Knicks beat them last year. Jared Allen said that the lights were too bright. So, which is another relatively young team that was taking the Cavs to the playoffs. Now, to put this like into perspective, like I understand why like the lights might have been a little bit too bright for him. Like it's a young team that is trying to take the Cavs to postseason success. Now, this was the first time like in literal decades the Cavs have made the playoffs without their king to guide them. So like LeBron was the reason why they weren't the Detroit Pistons right now. He left, and then they were the worst team. He came back, they weren't. And then when he left, they had a stretch of having a bunch of bad seasons, and then they traded for Donovan Mitchell, and here we are now. So, like obviously there was a lot of pressure going into that playoff matchup because it's like they didn't have LeBron. It's like this is relatively new environment for a lot of these people. So needed to get that chemistry down after the first year of getting Donovan Mitchell and whatnot. That Knicks team, they had better chemistry because they had a lot more players on the team that played with each other for several times. Like, for example, Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart, Villanova legends. So, obviously, like, the chemistry on that team was going to be much better, and I feel like that definitely played into why the Knicks were able to overcome that series. Go New York. Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers played Washington today. Last night after coming off of a road loss to the Cleveland Cavaliers. They ended up taking the win, and as I expected, because it's Washington. Jordan Poole didn't play this game, which might have actually been a benefactor for Washington, which might have been, it's probably why the score isn't like 134 to 109 right now. Kawhi was trending on Twitter tonight with 31 points. Harden ended with 25, 9, and 5. No Paul George tonight, but against a team like the Wizards, it's not really something that the Clippers should worry about, not having their second or third best player. I'm not entirely sure like who's their second to third, either Harden or Paul George. I think I'd pick Paul George to be their second option, but James Harden is the one that runs the plays. So let me know in the comments, who do you think is the second option on the Clippers? Is it James Harden or is it Paul George? But I have to give credit to Kawhi. If this was a few years ago, I would think he'd sit out this game. But so far, he's only missed 6 games this season. Obviously, it's great for the team. It's chemistry. I think he really likes playing with his team. The Wizards weren't expected to be a good team this year, but nobody thought they'd be this bad. Poole didn't play this game, as I mentioned before, but it was a good thing that he and Kuzma both have the worst plus-minus in the league. So having both of them on the court at the same time, according to the numbers, just hurts the team. It only hurts the team more. Kuzma didn't play bad, however, this game, so I won't say much about Kuzma. He had 27 points. This team is probably going to need to spend a while building through the draft. Nothing more I think I need to say because you guys know how I feel about the Clippers. I need to see this kind of excuse me. I need to see these kind of performances in the playoffs. And I need to see them actually make it and like make a deep run in these playoffs without losing in a series that they should have won. So until then, like, I can't entirely say that they are the favorites to win it. I just can't. Like, they have to prove it. And with that, we are out of time for the second segment. So join me for the third segment where I do something a little bit different and for the first time talk about the picks for tonight in tonight's games and who I think is going to end up coming out on top. So please stay tuned for that after this very short break.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we are back to the third segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, where I'm going to be doing something a little bit different, as I mentioned before in the previous segment, where I talk about the games that are going to be happening tonight and my picks for these games and who I think is going to win, how I think the game is going to be played out, etc., etc. So I'm just going to pull up my phone real quick and look at the games that are happening today. So the Knicks are matching up against Indiana in Madison Square Garden. The Lakers are going over to Boston and playing against the Boston Celtics. Cleveland is going over to Memphis, playing the Grizzlies. And the Sixers are going to go up against the Utah Jazz at Utah. So first, I should point out that Cleveland is going to be coming off of a back-to-back game. So the odds of them winning this one might not be like as high as they should, but because they are the Cavs and because like the Memphis Grizzlies don't have Ja Morant on the team anymore, I feel like the Cleveland Cavaliers are going to end up winning this game towards the end of it. And not entirely sure about Philly. Speaking of Philly, we'll get an update on Joel Embiid soon, within 24 hours. The NBA said we still have no idea the status of Joel Embiid and his injury, how severe it is, and how many games he will miss. If Philly played the way that they played in the last game against Golden State, I think they could win in this game against the Jazz. Now, the Jazz are a relatively mid team. They are not the best team. So that means they are beatable. So it could be a close one, depending on how the bench plays. I feel like the bench is going to respond well after Joel Embiid's injury. It's going to respond in a positive way. Kendrick Perkins, again, suggested to deactivate Joel Embiid for the entire season. And as much as I don't like Embiid, I don't think I'd say for the whole season. Maybe just before playoffs, just to avoid him getting injured yet again. But what really strikes me is it's how often this happens and how often he gets injured. It's insane to me, but I just can't. He always, and I think it has something to do with how he spends half of the time falling onto the ground and getting fouled. With someone as tall as him, that's not something that you could afford to do all the time and expect to not be injury prone. The bigger an object is, the harder it's going to fall. He gets injured every single postseason as well. And I feel like part of it is because of his play style and constantly falling on the floor and asking for calls and getting all that type of stuff. It all plays into his injuries. They just happen they happen so often. Now, let's talk about the next matchup, where it's the Knicks and the Pacers. The Knicks and the Pacers actually are the first teams to go on, along with the Lakers and the Boston Celtics. I'll talk about the Celtics later. And they match up in Madison Square Garden. I think the Knicks have a good balance of defense and offense to be able to keep up with the Pacers. I know that the Pacers, they're the best offensive team in the league right now. They have a really fast pace. Tyrese Halliburton is back. However, they play in Madison Square Garden, and I think this has a potential to be. Now, obviously, like the Knicks have home court advantage when they're in Madison Square Garden. And, like, the crowd is always behind the Knicks. So I feel like with that in mind and with, like, the matchups and, like, the postseason implications, this is going to be one of the best games of the week. The Knicks are a great team now with the 3 seed, and the Pacers are another good team and another very well-hyped team. They're the 6th seed. So this is literally like a playoff game or a little sneak peek of a playoff game. I personally think that the Knicks are going to end up coming out on top. Jalen Brunson, I feel like he's going to go off for a game. Even though the Knicks don't have Julius Randle, again, like I said before, I don't think that necessarily hurts the team all that much. Like, I feel like Jalen Brunson, along with the rest of the squad, can pull through in these games, like how they've pulled through in all the other games without Julius Randle. And Jalen Brunson's a great leader. OG Anunoby, great defender, great piece to the team. And I feel like all of these, like when you take all of these factors in mind, and Tyrese Haliburton recently coming off of an injury, how some of these players don't tend to be 100% post-injury, I feel like these Knicks are going to end up making a lot of noise in this game, and they're going to end up coming out on top. And the fans, they better be loud. Like, let me tell you, these fans, they better be loud and proud, because this is like playoff basketball. This is a playoffs matchup. I always like these matchups that like give us a little sneak peek of like what to expect in these games, and we'll see how Pascal Siakam is able to respond in this game. They've been, since the trade, they've been a little bit up and down, but at the same time, I don't want to like scrutinize them on that too much, simply because Tyrese Haliburton has missed a lot of games. So I feel like it would be relatively unfair doing that to the Indiana Pacers, just because like it's not fair. It's not something, they didn't have their best player, so it's like it makes sense how like, and on top of trading some of their players to get the Raptors star player in Pascal Siakam, chemistry issues are going to be a thing, and not having your best player to help you in those chemistry issues, it all boils down, and it all trickles into one effect, in my opinion. Now, Boston plays the Lakers at home. As you already know, the Lakers, they're terrible, and the Boston Celtics are going to absolutely blow these guys out of the water. I have no faith in the Lakers with this team, with Darvin Ham. I have no faith in them winning this game whatsoever. Absolutely none. They don't nearly have enough firepower on defense to be able to beat them at their home court. They don't nearly have the amount of firepower on offense to be able to match any of those players in their own home court. I'm not sure if AD is going to play in this game. His injury status is questionable. He sat out the last one due to hip and Achilles quote-unquote issues, whatever that means. So if he sits out in this game, there's absolutely no hope for the Lakers whatsoever. And like again, like you'd have to expect a straight up masterful performance from LeBron James. And even then, I still think this is going to be one of those games where he scores 60 or like 50 and has a triple-double, and he loses. So, again, as you know, like the Boston Celtics, they're the best team in the East right now, and with Milwaukee struggling, I actually think now that they are at the favorites in the East and the ones that will come out and make it all the way to the finals, given recent news and how the Bucks have been playing and the Bucks head coach. So, with that in mind, I don't think they're going to be losing to the Lakers. I mean, LeBron is going to try all he can. And Darvin Ham is just going to run a lineup that's just going to mess everything up for him. It's common. It happens every single time. And right now for the Lakers, like if you're a Laker fan, you're just waiting for Darvin Ham to get fired, or you're just waiting for a big trade to happen. And that's sort of like the only hope that the Lakers have in order to salvage this season, because it cannot be that 6 years of prime LeBron, and they only have 3 playoff appearances to show for it. That is absolutely inexcusable. Yes, I say only 3 because that is inexcusable. Every single team that LeBron has played with has made the playoffs, not counting the first 2 years when he was a rookie and a sophomore. If you want to count those 2 years, then whatever, but that's just ridiculous ridiculous expectations from a rookie and a sophomore on a Cleveland Cavaliers team. Now, as I mentioned before, the Cavs play the Memphis Grizzlies going into this game. Now, the Cavs should easily win this game, despite being away and despite playing back-to-back games. I have a feeling that they're going to end up winning this game in the end, simply because that they are the better team, and now that they have Darius Garland out there, they have much more production offensively, so they're able to cancel out any sort of offensive production that the Grizzlies are going to have. And another advantage that Cleveland has in this game is the fact that their best player, Ja Morant, is out for the season again. So he's not suspended, just out due to surgery and injury. And because of this, the Memphis Grizzlies are not in a spot to compete in the Western Conference. I'm going to just go ahead and pull up the standings real quick, just so I can make sure that the Grizzlies right now are 18-29, and they stand. Where do they stand? Yep, they stand 13th in the Western Conference. So bottom feeder, one of the worst teams in the West. And when you are playing in the West, and all the other teams that are above them are almost identical in record. Their records are so close to each other. It's pretty funny. It happens every single year with the East and the West. It's always the East is going to have just two teams that are just dominant, and then the West is going to have everyone that's dominant. But I will say that it hasn't really happened this year, because the Knicks and the Sixers, when they had Embiid, they have been dominant, and they've shown that they've been dominant, and they've shown that the Eastern Conference is now a pretty legitimate conference. Before, they used to the Eastern Conference used to get clowned because East versus West. West is always better. West has all of these stars, and East has these stars. There's been an argument going on for a long time, but I personally think that the East right now, it's way more competitive than it was before, and these teams, and the fact that the Knicks are even competing is just unbelievable to me. That is some news that I never thought I would hear ever in my life. It's really it's something to be amazed. Just to be in New York, just to be not a really New Yorker. You guys know I'm from Jersey, but just to be a relative in that spot, in that local area, and having teams represent you. That's always a great feeling, and I hope all of you sports fans can feel that feeling eventually, unless you're a Dallas Cowboys fan, and with that, I hope you never feel that feeling whatsoever. And but not talking about football. Let's talk more about basketball. About this Lakers game. How do I think it's going to play out? Well, I feel like LeBron is going to he's going to end the game with a triple-double. I have a strong feeling that he's going to end the game putting up ridiculous numbers, and Austin Reeves isn't going to show up as he typically does. D'Angelo Russell, I feel like maybe D'Angelo Russell is going to have a game tonight, given as he just had one bad one recently. He's going to want to step up in this next one. And let me think. Let's see if Roy Hachimura can actually play 20-plus minutes in this game. I personally don't think he's going to play 20 minutes with how Darvin Ham handles his rotations. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. But on more about the Knicks and their matchups against the Pacers. The Pacers, they run a really, really fast offense. Their offense is quick. It is lightning quick. And the Knicks, with the team that they have and the team that's structured around them, their defense, Jalen Brunson, I'm not saying that Jalen Brunson is a good defender. That's a matchup that I'm actually kind of scared about, Jalen Brunson on Tyrese. Hopefully that won't happen. Hopefully they won't put the smallest player on the court against the best player on the court. But if that matchup ever does happen, and he's stuck on an island with that, I would be legitimately scared, because Jalen Brunson, being the shortest player on the court, his defense is kind of lacking, and he has to produce offensively, which he does. He's very consistent on the offensive side of the ball, which is what I really like about him and why he is a Villanova legend. But with the addition of OG Anunoby, I have a feeling that the coach is going to put OG on Tyrese simply to slow Tyrese down and his playmaking abilities. OG Anunoby is like his frame is relatively wide and he has long arms and he's a taller defender. Well, he's a taller player than Tyrese. He's much more of a problem to try and get around, in my personal opinion. When you have a defender that's like straight up bigger than you, it's much more difficult to like shoot over them. It is a little bit easier to like potentially blow by them if like they have way too much size on you, but OG Anunoby, like, he's quick on his feet. He's very versatile. So I have a feeling that the coach is going to try and set that matchup up for him and constantly have OG on Tyrese. If they do that, I feel like they could end up winning this game, assuming Tyrese just doesn't go off on OG, because OG has had several instances where several players he's defending just goes off on him for some reason, and I have no idea why. Even it looks like he's playing good defense, but they just go off on him. And so we are out of time for this third segment. We are going to go into the surprise fourth segment where we talk about, is the 65-game requirement a good addition to the league and its award system? So tune in after this short break. I'll be right back. And we are back to the fourth segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, where we're going to be talking about if this 65-game requirement that the league has added is a good addition or if it's a bad addition. Now, the reason why this segment is being brought up is because I can't do it without mentioning Joel Embiid's most recent injury. As you guys might know, Draymond Green went out with what looked like to be a hyperextended knee. Again, we don't have much information on what the injury is. Be ready for an update on one of our shorts in our TikToks, because I will definitely update you guys on when the injury status of Joel Embiid is revealed. And most recently on Draymond Green's podcast, he said Joel Embiid playing tonight felt very much so because of the 65-game rule. I think it's actually quite BS, end quote. So Draymond Green clearly voices his opinion. He doesn't like this 65-game requirement whatsoever, and he's saying that maybe Joel Embiid wouldn't have played tonight if that 65-game requirement wasn't there, and it thus forced him into re-aggravating his injury. Now, I could see Draymond's I could see why Draymond's opinion, that's a relatively valid opinion, as to why he doesn't like the 65-game rule, because if it's going to force players to play when they legitimately can't, but they want the incentives, and they feel like it's just going to contradict, and it's going to it's really going to weigh in. Do you protect your your body, or do you go for the award now that you're number one in the MVP ranks? Which one do you do? It was really tough, but Joel Embiid went and pushed through, obviously, and it didn't end up going his way. But he looked a little bit injured going into the game, even though he didn't relatively play that well. Regardless whether he's injured, he did not play well at all. If you're injured, you shouldn't be hugging the ball the way he did, and you shouldn't be turning the ball over the way he did. It's the same thing that James Harden did when he was going up against the Milwaukee Bucks and he injured his hamstring. He was just holding the ball for 24 seconds trying to do something, and it just didn't end up working in the end. Crucial PG's back in the chat. What's up, man? I haven't seen you in a while. But anyways, now onto another player who doesn't like the 65 game rule. Tyrese Halliburton was quoted saying that this was a stupid rule, even though, like, in my opinion, he's probably only saying this because he's also not safe from succumbing to this rule either and not making All-NBA. And not many players like this rule. And I'm curious as to why. Like, I don't really see this as like a stupid rule or a stupid implication. Like, if I was an NBA player, at least, like, he might think it's stupid because he's going to miss out on All-NBA selection, which would give him a huge bonus. So obviously, like, he will be upset about that. And I understand where he's coming from. It's like they're trying to move the goalpost from under his nose, and it's a little bit unfair in that sense. But you also have to understand why these rules were like put in place in the first place. Like, it's not moving the goalpost. The NBA is just full of way too much talent now. And, like, it's full of players who are worth that All-NBA spot, the All-Star spot, the MVP. Like, it's full of all of these type of players who deserve these type of awards. And it's on a surge now because, like, of how many people have been scoring 60, 70, 50-point games and putting up all these types of ridiculous stats. And it's like, it's a surge, and we've noticed it coming from the past season. Well, actually, it's a surge that's been happening since the Golden State Warriors made their super team with Kevin Durant and Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. That's what I've noticed, that a lot of these, like, super high-powered offensive teams, they've emerged, like, directly after that. So it's almost like it's a renaissance for basketball, in my personal opinion, in scoring the ball, at least. It's a huge scoring surge. Like, it's really something to see. We've had back-to-back seasons with two people scoring 70 points. That is literally unheard of in this league. So with that in mind, it has become very, very difficult for voters to decide, like, who deserves this award, especially when some of these players are averaging these numbers but sat out a considerable amount of games. That's the big problem that's been coming around. Like, your best ability is your availability, as they always say. And I personally think that how often you're there for your team through thick and thin, and whether or not you are injury prone, is important. And it's an important factor that should be measured, in my personal opinion. It might be unfair to the athletes who are injury prone because they can't really control, like, if they get injured and whatnot. But I understand that, like, bad things happen. You also should be, like, held accountable to protecting your body better than so you can be there for your team. Like, we should be giving these star players that play a lot of these games a lot more praise than they do for being able to play these games and to stay healthy for these games. It also makes it a lot easier for the voters to decide. Like, for example, Joel Embiid, the last season when he won MVP, he didn't really play that many games, but he won the MVP. So, like, just for a hypothetical sense, we'll put it into, like, Joel Embiid only played 58 games. He won the MVP or all NBA over someone like Giannis, who played 72 games. Let me know in the comments if you think that total games played would matter in the kind of situation. Now, that was completely hypothetical. So, like, if Joel Embiid only played 58 games, but he won the MVP, and then Giannis only played 72 games, like, who do you think, based on how well they average, based on the numbers that they average, which of those two do you think deserves the MVP? The one that played less games or the one that played more games and was there for their team more? The MVP voters have been struggling because of this. And, like, what exactly is too little games played? Like, there was never a line that could be drawn because everyone's opinion was different. So, but now that the NBA has decided it for them, it makes it a lot easier. It makes it a lot easier to eliminate certain players who aren't eligible for this award. Now, the only potential problem that I do see with this rule is if someone is averaging these great numbers, he gets injured, but his team literally cannot win without him. Like, every single game that he doesn't play, they've lost. And that to me, that is literally like what the MVP is. Because without that player, the team is literally just losing and they're nothing. And I'm not talking about like winning some games. I mean losing all of their games without their star player. He wasn't there. Then that literally means that without him, his team can't win. But that's my opinion. Let me know what you guys think about that in the comments. Not to mention, this is another method of the NBA trying to get players to stop sitting out of these games. This is all Greg Popovich's fault with his really smart strategy of load managing. It's just now that teams are starting to abuse it for their own good to ensure that their players are well rested. Now, I agree that this is a very smart move, but while it is smart, I also think it's relatively selfish and a weak move from an NBA athlete. Like I mentioned before in previous podcasts, a lot of fans don't really have the money to go and see an NBA game live. But if they do, if they really want to see an NBA live game, a lot of them save up the money so that way they're able to either pay for a ticket if the game is relatively far, pay for a plane ticket is what I meant, pay for an actual ticket for the game, pay for a place to stay, assuming the game is away, and just to go to one game and just to see their favorite player live in action and hooping. You see it all the time. Some players hold up signs saying that I just flew all the way from the other side of the world just to watch Nikola Jokic, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Luka Doncic, just to name a few. And this is applicable for all ages and for all genders as well. And now imagine that they get news that their favorite player is out. Like, as a child, like, my dreams would be crushed if, like, my parents are like, we're finally able to bring you to an NBA game to watch your favorite player, and then the player just gets hurt. It's like, and not only that, but then like the parents are also going to feel relatively bad because it's like, wow, we wasted all this money and he just decided not to play. And it's a good thing that my favorite player growing up was Kobe, besides LeBron. Like, all of you guys know that I'm a LeBron fan, but I've grown up watching Kobe, and Kobe is my favorite player. Yes, he's my favorite player, but that doesn't mean I'm delusional and I think that he's better than LeBron. I'd say I have a relatively good knowledge of basketball, and I know that LeBron's better than Kobe. I'm not like one of those crazy Laker fans. I have nothing but respect for both of these players and their talents, and I appreciate what they both have done for this game. And they are both they're both the best players in this game. I have them top 3, both of them. Now, obviously, you might think that I'm crazy for having Kobe in the top 3, but it's my opinion, so I can say what I want. And Kobe never sat out. Unless he literally couldn't play, unless he was playing with a broken leg, unless like his arm falls off or something like that, he never sits out. He played with a broken finger. He's played through so many injuries. If he can hoop, if he can shoot the ball, he is going to play. He wanted to do everything that he could to help his team win every single night. And he played every single game like it was a game 7. And these are the type of players that I have like lots of respect for because they get it. They understand that a lot of people are looking up to them. And it's a lot more than just winning a game of basketball and winning for your team. I mean, it's all about winning, and it's all about winning the championship. Don't get me wrong. But you also have to think about like your fans and like the people that support you to get you to the top. And sitting out for these games, like the way that a lot of these star players do, it's incredibly selfish in my opinion. And that's why I have a lot of respect for Ant, who is one of the players that has the same mentality as I do, where you shouldn't, or not as I do, but the same mentality as Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, where they have to play every single game because there might be some fans in there that can only pay for one ticket. And if he doesn't show up, he's just letting them down. And he can't let his fans down. That is a great attitude to have towards these games. And it's amazing like how it completely shifted in this time. Like, I didn't think it would shift. Like, why are these players just choosing not to play these games? It doesn't make much sense to me. Like, it's their life. This is what they do. This is what they work for every single day. And they just decide, nah, I don't want to do it. I don't want to play it. Like, what would happen if all of a sudden, like, I just randomly decide, I don't want to do this podcast anymore. Like, what's going to happen? Like, and nothing really happens to them either if they do miss games. Like, they don't get fined for it, even though, like, if they do get fined for it, I feel like that's a little bit too much. Unless you're Kyrie Irving, who got fined for, not taking the vaccine. God, I can't stand that man. But regardless, like, this new like load managing perception, it's like it needs to go. It has to go. And that's why I really credit Adam Silver for implementing these new ideas and like these new ways to sort of try to make the regular season much more important, so that way the star players could play the rest of these games. Now, it's ironic how a lot of these players are like complaining about this 65 game requirement, but this 65 game requirement wouldn't have been a thing if all of the players just played the game like how they normally do. Like if it was their jobs, and just wouldn't choose to just randomly sit out for no reason just because, oh, this is against the worst team in the league. I don't got to play this game. Oh, this is a playoff team. Oh, let me just rest and like save my game for later in the playoffs. Like, no, you play every game like it's a game 7. Like all of your fans, like they saved up to watch you play, and you owe it to them to show up to these games and to play in these games if you are able to. Now, if you legitimately are injured and you have to sit out and you don't want to re-aggravate any other injury, I understand why you would sit out and like you take time off. But if you are able to play, just play the game. Like it's not that difficult to ask. Just play the game. That's all our fans want, just for you to play. And like as a Nets fan, I've never had that opportunity because Kyrie, Kevin Durant, James Harden only played 17 games together. Harden is the only one that I will like exempt from this because Harden never took breaks. Harden always came to play like every single time. He doesn't load manage until the end of the season. He knows how valuable he is for his team, and he knows the fans come to see him every single night. He's another player that I don't give enough credit for that. But Kevin Durant and with Kyrie Irving, they just choose, oh, wait, I'm going to sit out this game, or I'm going to sit out this game. Especially Kyrie. Like, Kevin Durant might not be doing it now that much because he wants to get the MVP and he needs to meet that 65-game requirement. But Kyrie, Kyrie's just going to miss whatever game he wants. He doesn't care about that. He thinks there are bigger things to life than basketball, which there are. But, it's Kyrie. He's a quack. But that's the reason why, like, these sort of rules have been put in place. They've been put in place, or like not rules, but like new requirements have been put in place. They've been put in place simply to like make these players like play these games and give value to the regular season, which is why I really like the in-season tournament, because it makes the games, like the actual games, much more competitive because they're fighting for incentives. Like now, it might not be like a legitimate title, but it still gives like a lot more like value to the regular season and gives more incentives to players to continue to play the game and to not sit out in these games. And with that, we are out of time for the 4th segment. Thank you guys all for tuning into the GSMC Basketball Podcast. If you enjoy this episode, please remember to like and to subscribe. Don't forget to don't forget to click the link that's in the description below to tip and to donate. Once again, that is streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. It is displayed right below in the ticker as always. And I'm your host, Nelson, and I will see you guys in the next segment tomorrow.